Good morning, Bookless classroom. Notice how I see myself when I just smile. Because that's what it amounts to. But no, I'm on the air. I don't know. I have a persona that's like, oh, there's my audience. A big zip dash. Wasn't that the, oh my gosh, talk about a terrible memory. Wasn't that the dash? They'd go back and forth and pick up the eraser. Wasn't that the zip dash? Oh, who hated that one? Me? I don't know what that, no, it was the shuttle run. That's what it was, the shuttle run. Anyone remember that from the presidential election, president's physical fitness program? Oh, and thanks for eliminating that. We didn't have enough money for it. What are you talking about? The pharmaceuticals industry. We are here in the Bookless classroom. It is day 256 and it is October 8th. Thanks so much for joining me again. And yeah, we're moving on. I have got a little update on, nothing. But the titles, I'm just saying, so we have moved into world religion. So from world history, we are rolling into world religion because honestly, that is why they lived. They lived for their God and their gods. And, you know, the book is really right now in chapter 2 of Mankind's Search for God, which I've showed you, website, everything. You can get everything I'm talking about and the readings and all of that. And I know how people feel. But you know what? Guess what? These people are still talking about having a true religion when you just see at every turn, it's like where the hairs stand up a little bit on the back of your neck kind of thing. It's like that. Oh, you got so many things right. But what I do believe that they get right, and who I'm talking about, Watchtower, which I think broke off into several groups, and this is, I don't know, and this is one of them, but I am not sure. And this is jw.org, no longer really claiming Jehovah's Witness. No, I'm kidding. It was a joke. It was a bad joke. It was probably hurtful to them. But the theme, oh, did I lose what I was going to say? Oh, here, I'm going to get to it. I don't know what I was going to say. I'm sure it is going to come up again, but I do have to say that I probably was going to give some exception or something to the text. No, I wasn't. I was going to give a theme of this. It really still is a great text. It's just a great text. I veer from the text a lot. Yeah, and I did start to say that there was something in there about it that makes it not a true religion to me. That's where I started. But they do, oh, that's where it was. That's what it was. So, where did religion begin? That is chapter 2. How did religion begin? And I put commonalities in religion. I probably shouldn't have done that because that's not really what we're saying. That's not what it is. It is, we are looking at commonalities, but it really is more of a And that's actually where we started yesterday. So that kind of, I'm, doing two things at once, of course, but I'm trying to get to the point of that chapter 2 is about where did religion begin? There we go. But the thing that interested me was the commonalities in religion. So here's the thing about this. I'm not going by the text, right? I'm going as a history informant. I said they're all informants out there. As a history informant kind of thing. So, and this is where religion began. Religion did begin with a adornment of their gods right from the very beginning. So when scientists are asking the question, where did religion begin? There are some great points in here that they're making, which is well, here's a great one. Numerous series attempt to explain the origin of religion and could be cited. Most of them, however, have been forgotten, and none of them have really stood out as more credible or acceptable than others. Why? Well, some have stood out, right? Certainly Christianity has stood out. Catholicism has stood out as not being the same as Christians. I'm the one actually who said you are Christians, period. You believe in Jesus Christ, you're a Christian. And then they sort of seem to have gotten on board with that. It's amazing. It's utterly amazing. A lot of the point of chapter 2, which I embrace, but not as thoroughly as the book does. And that is that scientists are starting from a faulty foundation. And the faulty foundation is, let's go back and explore historically where it's kind of a bottom-up, top-down approach. Okay? Where did religion begin? Well, scientists do a bottom-up approach and go back in history and say, what were, for example, the commonalities? What were they looking for? If I go back in history, I can find the creation of it, which is a top-down theory. It always was. It's written in our hearts. And this is kind of where we can get a no beginning, no end. I know I've talked about this before because it feels very familiar to me. But a no beginning, no end, right? Infinite. As scientists, you go back and you look, and where are you going to find it? Where are you going to find it? Are you going to find it in the DNA? Then why are you chopping up bones like that and disintegrating bones? What you're doing is you're disintegrating evidence for your own purposes and then making up theories and stories that you're going to say, oh, in 100 years we didn't know. I knew. Lots of people know what you're doing. Lots of people know what you're doing. Just because you write the story to make it look like you didn't know what the fuck you were doing. And sorry for that, I didn't have to swear there. Anyway, so the faulty foundation is how you are approaching your evidence and proof. It's a bottom up. I'm going from here and I'm going backwards. And everything about what you're doing is backwards. You say it's evidence, it's not evidence. You say it's the scientific method, it's not the scientific method. You say we're going forward in time, we're going backwards in time. Do you understand what I'm saying? In order to create a narrative. And we know the narrative is faulty. I know I could use contacts. I know what would be better. I just know what would be better. You know why? Because I look too much like my mom. Unless I put my hair up like this. Then I don't. Then I look like the teacher. Like in the picture. And that's why I put my hair up. Because when it's down, I do look like my mom. And that's one of those things. You just, nope. Nope. And that whole Mother Earth thing too, that's pretty doggone creepy. No. From the Egyptian, so I started reading a little bit on them, right? And part of it comes from the book. So I might as well get to it. And I'm gonna read, I'll probably end up reading it. And if I find it, I'm gonna read it right now. Right here. So I'm gonna jump in with this, and then this way you guys can kind of, I think you can kind of begin a discussion from the middle and make connections from what we talked about yesterday and today, and I'll make connections when we're done with this part. Both Catholicism and Buddhism are steeped in rituals and ceremonies. These include the use of candles, incense, holy water, the rosary, images of saints, chants and prayer books, even the sign of the cross. Now that I find staggering. A little bit I'd have to say staggering. As far as putting two religions together and that many commonalities, did you find those in your DNA? Did you find that in there? Those commonalities in your markers? Just wondering. I think it's a good question. So candles, incense, holy water, rosary, images of saints, chants and prayer books. And we talked about that this morning in Early Birds, because we know prayers and we know they are chanted. Bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts, which we are about to receive from thy bounty through Christ our Lord. Amen. And my sister gave that prayer over Thanksgiving dinner, and don't think I wasn't like perturbed, because I was. And her son was watching my face. And I've said this before. Her son was watching my face because he knew I was going to be perturbed at her chanting this prayer. Woo! I was. On Thanksgiving, you don't have something better prepared than that? And that's kind of the person I am. It doesn't make me, what ended up happening? Well, we got in a brawl. No, nothing. I shut my mouth like I should. I was respectful. And then I dropped it from my heart as well, because it was none of my business how she prays to her God. And my God. I believe we believe in the same God. I don't think she does. There's only one Almighty God. She believes she's praying to him. I believe she is. It's just like that. That's what this is about, religious freedom. So let's find out the roots, and let's remember we have a faulty premise when we come from a scientific perspective and try and work our way backwards, particularly with the way that they've allowed themselves to collect evidence. And you know what that means. So I find that, like I said, both religions maintain institutions of monks and nuns and are noted for celibacy of priests, special garb, holy days, special foods. This list is by no means exhaustive, but it serves to illustrate the point. The question is, why do two religions that appear to be so different have so many things in common? Damn good question. That's why I like this book. That's a GD good question. Thanks, Dawkins, for focusing on the most important thing. What was that? I'm sorry, what was that? Water's a gas? Thanks. Yeah, I think no matter how many times I say it, point well made. Thanks, water's a gas. I gotta turn down the heat. I turned it up. It was cold in here. You know, I'm just going through this thing. I was sweating out. I said, oh, I was sweating something out the other night. That is for GD, sure. That is for sure. And not only that, but how do you overextend your arm when you're sleeping? I know how. When almost weightless little spirit munchkins put some weight on it. Anywho, let me go on. So where was the good question? Why do two religions that appear to be so different have so many things in common? That's a really good question. Stop your effing debating over there, Dawkins, and do something. Because so far, so much, I don't think you're that smart. I think what you did was a Darwin thing. Only Darwin did it in humility, and you do not. Just saying. As enlightening as the comparison of these two, I know that's going to be thrown in my face now. Your hair doesn't look great. I'm just saying. Those glasses make your eyes look crossed. I'm just saying. So I don't go out much. I'd rather not hear what you're just saying. I do want to hear what you're saying. No doubt about it, since there's been silence around me other than these informers over here. Getting a nice big red truck, getting a nice big gray truck, getting dropped off by Uber. Who even knows? As enlightening as the comparison of these two religions turns out to be, the same can be done with other religions. When we do so, we find that certain teachings and beliefs are almost universal among them. Most of us are familiar with such doctrines as the immortality of the human soul, heavenly reward for all good people, eternal torment for the wicked in an underworld, purgatory, a triune God, or a godhead of many gods, and a mother of God, or the Queen of Heaven goddess. So, about that Queen of Heaven goddess. Oh, that's in the next chapter, sorry. So I'm not going to get into it in this chapter. But you might know about that queen, about some of those goddesses. First of all, they are all portrayed as being prostitutes, with the exception of Mary, and that has elevated her to a deity. Because she got pregnant under a different premise that didn't leave her in the same company as Venus or Gaia. It elevated her to a deity. Well, I mean, you know, it would. If that story is true. I mean, she carried God's child, and the pregnancy was immaculate. Not that what I have done in the bedroom with my husband was, you know, all right, it was whatever. You know, you do try and justify that animal act, and other than it feels good, it's hard. Well, no, and then the miracle of life. Yeah, there's that. All right, let's get to it. So, I've got the book in my hands. I didn't have it in my hands yesterday. I'm using the book. The pictures are really irrelevant. The only thing I don't know about are the charts that they have in there, and some of those are pretty relevant. You'll notice that doesn't this look familiar? Right? So, as a human race dispersed from Mesopotamia, their religions, ideas, and memories went with them. So here is a book that is really outstanding. What I mean is standing out from the group in saying what we know and have most information. And people are like, well, yeah, but that's based on the Bible. The Bible's based on human beings. Well, so is history, by the way. And we've got a pretty detailed account that seems to be more authentic than most because it recognizes the downfall of man. Which then, of course, gets to some of the other commonalities that we want to point out. So let's take a look at the PowerPoint I have ready for you. Damn, she works hard. She works hard. Fixing that messenger bag over there. It's my go-to, is the Tennessee accent. It's my go-to. It's easy. It's just an easy one out of the bag. However, that being said, I got to get a new accent. I can practice my Espanol. Got to watch a little Speedy Gonzales. That's it. That's all it takes. A little Speedy Gonzales on YouTube. I might bring it to you. I might be bringing it tomorrow. We'll see. Oh, she said we'll see. Si, senor. You bring it. See, no. You have to have a little Spanglish in there, too. So here we're going through our topics. I do sometimes wonder, even just that innocent comment, yeah, throw a little Spanglish in there when you do a Spanish accent, would have got me canceled. Totally politically incorrect. I mean, come on, really think about it. Get over yourselves, right? Just get over yourselves, you and your mallet. Back to those GD justices too, and that you can take literally. Putting a Milton Friedman Act. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not an act? What? It's set precedent over what you're supposed to be doing, which is what? Protecting our constitutional rights? I'm sorry. How many judges and which judges ruled in favor of the Milton Friedman precedent over the rights of citizens because that precedent puts corporations over the rights of citizens? How many of you, it is diametrically opposed to our Constitution? Setting up a social agenda that includes profit for corporations is diametrically opposed to our constitutional rights, as you have seen played out time and time again. So please explain to me, how many boards are our justices on? What was that? What was that? We've got a justice on the board over there at Lake Sherwood, and that might be a good example of what justices can do and would do when they're on the board in order to what? Profit from their social activism. What's their social activism? making decisions in favor of profit? Do you think that your little poetic linguistics play tricks on our ears? It's lawyerese. It's not pretty. There's no tune, nothing going on. I don't know. So I'm always happy to go through this again, except for I'm not happy when I have to hit the thing twice. It should be floating right over. We seem to be doing okay now. We work hard in this classroom, putting a lot of information together. You can be sure of that. Did we get a whole picture of the Indus Valley? Like that big picture of the Indus Valley? Other than the one that's just the beautiful one with the river. And you can see how then in that Indus Valley passageway, the one with the beautiful river that said Indus Valley there, you could see that beautiful passageway. I should actually, since we've seen this one so often, I should actually change this one to the Indus Valley one. But we have the small Indus Valley, but not the big one. Or at the very least, change this one. Do you think she's going to do it right now? Or sit and stare at it first? I'm going to do it. And there's a reason why. And that's because I've got so many pictures of, there we go. Of the other one that I just had up there, and not simply just not enough at all of this Indus Valley. And so here we've got, even though I talk about it, so here you can see clearly that this is India. Now you see the Arabian Sea, and the Arabian Sea goes up into the Persian Gulf. All right? And so you're talking about significantly north when you are talking about, for example, well, people who are part of the Baltic states, but also, for example, Russian Jews. And again, who's giving them the names? Did the name Sumerians come from what? Well, what they called themselves, or what? Because we know terms like religion come much later. Religion is a modern term to help us understand and get a hold on these beliefs. As we saw in very early Egyptian times, right? Where we saw the Akkadian Sumerian leader Argon, right? Or was it Sargon the Great? I think it's Sargon. I have it back there though. And and actually could. So, and probably will. So what was his great contribution? Sargon the Great. That he brought together Akkadian and Sumerian under one central government. What was one of the longest lasting empires in the Egyptian Empire, the first dynasty, uniting these kingdoms. But I thought that there was uniting languages and I can't remember who this ruler was right here. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points down. Religion goes from monotheism in some respects related to the sun god Re to pantheism to polytheism. Many rulers and others have found it difficult to record. But another important point right there is that one of the people who brought the Egyptian gods to a monotheistic, almost monotheistic region was a ruler who brought them all together, who unified them under the sun god Re. But then as you can see, there would be some contention. If I preferred the god of the pastoral life, for example, who are you to tell me my God is not measurable to your God? So you can see a lot of things here. You can see a deep-rooted belief in higher powers, in understanding of these higher powers, or at least evidence in their minds and spirits of these higher powers, right from the very beginning of mankind. So maybe that's the definition of civilization. Maybe that's when God breathed life into man and woman in Mesopotamia so that they could reproduce. But it wasn't up to them to reproduce across the nations. It was up to Abraham to reproduce across the nations. That was the blessing and the promise. So maybe the rest of them were wanting to reproduce with Abraham's descendants in order to actually reproduce, right? That was the promise to Abraham. And it certainly would be the desire of all kinds of other beings, including other gods, to be able to carry on their legacy. It's very interesting, isn't it? And the things that we haven't studied or we don't know about when you think about it, right? And in that way, the monotheistic religion was able to reproduce. You would have all kinds of other peoples and gods wanting to reproduce with them. But what's the caveat? Death. If you want your descendants to carry on, then you are either, graft on by permission to do so because you would reproduce, take care of these descendants of yours. And I would have to say that that's really what it's all about. How would you take care of the descendants of yours? So, theorizing, and certainly worth the theory and the time, other than the bullshit chaos we have going on, certainly worth the cognitive time to think about whether or not the monotheistic religion has organized people in the monotheistic way, has organized people in a way that is better for people. I'm not one to make judgments on religion. It's always what I've said. There's religious freedom, and there are concepts, and there is no true religion, but there are concepts, certainly, that we need to be giving more credence to, and scientists should have been studying instead of the lucrative area of medicine and pharmaceuticals, which are, by the way, one and the same. Drugs, legal drugs, that's it. Altering the patterns of your brain. Poisonous, they're poison. By definition, that's the reason why they have to be regulated. They're bad for your body. They have to be regulated because they're bad for your body. And we see that in the commercials. So all I'm saying is a much more interesting question might be for the services of all people, including how to maintain the population that we have without trying to figure out sinister ways to destroy them in order for you to what? Gain all the resources? I mean, that seems like a small g God thing to do, doesn't it? To use your power. And that certainly is what humans need to learn as well, about the power of power. Women learn it early on. I've said this before. Women learn it early on. I don't have the power. The only power I physically have over anybody is my children. And I don't want to use that power. It's a perfect example. You know, I spanked my kids, but not very often. My older son, more often, because he could take it. My younger son, it feels like 3 times. I could have really taken a stick to him when he was older. Like a broom handle, but that's not, and certainly not like, you know. I don't know. There have been so many things wrapped up in trying to malign me that I really feel like my whole family had to figure out what was true and what wasn't true about me. And that's just a shame. That's just a shame. You can't live your life for good because there are people who are so rotten, they want to make sure that you aren't producing good. That's despicable. So that needs to be considered here. We are able to get people to work together and then create peaceable times. When the more that we all agree on our God and our system of things. And that is like a top-down kind of mentality That's a top-down perspective. That is, you're not going to find out where religion came from because it came from a spiritual realm and has infinitely been inside of us. So, stop looking for it. And from a scientific way, when you are limited to your five senses, and by the way, you've perverted the scientific method. So you in the medical community, you don't even understand science. And that's the truth of it. And you don't understand science because you have rationalized your theories and biases are more important than science. And you started doing that in the medical community. And that's history. You started doing it in the medical community because you allowed for medication that you called life-saving without having the appropriate evidence behind it. If it's life-saving for some, why? Why them and not others? Have you really found a life-saving medication across the board? Really? Because that's what you were looking for? You know what I'm saying? Stupid fruit fly. So let's get to it. There's my Indus Valley. And that was the map, because I really thought that map, other than this map, or more than that map, should really be the focus and concentration, because that seems to be a thread of truth across time and across mediums. And it's a nice picture. It really gives you, and there's the Himalayan mountains. And so traveling from the east, the far east, China, through the Himalaya mountains and finding basically traveling through the Himalayas. That's what they did. And found a new trade route and traded their things and made friends. And then economics and politics and probably some language barriers, right? Probably some language barriers. Okay. So again, that's the early part of what they're talking about. But I didn't pull that map off. Okay, so here were the ideas of where we're going to go and why we were going to world history, right? Here is our history of monotheism. And now we're pulling together in a very logical kind of way why we might want to be monotheists. From a spiritual perspective, all by itself, it makes sense, right? That there would be one creator of all things, that creator would likely give his creation similar powers, or maybe even just that almighty creator is one of all the other creators. They've just decided on different paths for their creation. That makes sense as well, right? Lots of interesting things here. In fact, another interesting thing here is that although, well, no. I'm going to hold that thought. God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. He is those things. Although it's interesting, does the Bible really say those things? Is it part of the legend, right? Okay, so we've kind of gotten from, so we got our foundations in the Bible. Now we're using this book, which is heavy science as we know it in the area of God and religion. It just is. Where else is it? Now with Dawkins, that's not science. That's psychobabble is what that is. That's his opinion spread all over the pages. That's all that is. Thanks for buying it. Have you heard my opinion? My opinion really does help other people a lot. Have you heard my opinion? Defining civilization in Mesopotamia, we already talked about that and where I got that from and what was going on with AI, why that was powerful. Chapter 1, why be interested in other religions? Did I do any of this in chapter 1? It doesn't feel like we talked about it because it doesn't feel like I did the page numbers. So we did not. So chapter 1 is why be interested in other religions, even though we, and what was that called yesterday? Give me one sec. World religions and religious freedom. So, and then today, commonalities in religion. So, yeah, I just wanted to see where we were. I want to, sometimes I slow down a little bit with this whole thing to give you an organization in your mind. So today, what we did earlier today was we took a look at the direction of where this is really going. And now what I'm doing is I'm backing it all up to be able to give you the details right from the source. See, I'm not reading the book and we're not using the book verbatim for the ideas that the book is presenting in the way that the book is purposed, right? But it is a great resource for what I'm talking about. So I'm not really listing the chapters because we're not reading it. I'm not really highlighting the name of the book, although I am. Do you understand? We're using it as a strong basis for discussion because as we turn from world history, we are turning into world religion. We are getting a top-down essence of who we are rather than this bottom-up investigation of who we are that seems to be expensive and fruitless. And why wouldn't it be? Your eyes are supposed to be up, eyes on God. Religion, there is a great definition. This was something that I loved about and do love about the material that Watchtower and Tract Society puts out, or jw.org puts out. I think it is probably, again, the Watchtower and Tract Society broke off. jw.org are the Jehovah's Witnesses, but they kind of want to lose that little bit of negative stereotyping. Religion, the definition, devotion to some principle, strict fidelity or faithfulness, conscientiousness, pious affection, or attachment. Okay, and so the question becomes on page 7, I might have read that yesterday, I'm not sure, and gone through these points very quickly. But the question that comes up there then, or the point of that definition is that lots of people, everyone is religious. Everyone. You are devoted to some principle, even as a scientist, and even when you act as an atheist, you still have a religion, a devotion to some principle. You are strictly faithful to that principle. You are conscientious to make sure that your behavior in all parts of your life reflect that principle. You are attached to it. It is part of you. So certainly by that definition, and so that makes this, you begin to see how this book is purposefully drawing attention to branching out, right? Branching your mind out. I'm not religious. Let's think about that a little bit. And that's what I like about everything they write. That's what I like about everything that they write. And that's probably the thing they were allowed to keep, the true essence of what that institution, Watchtower Institution, first started out to be, in my estimation. I'm not intimately involved in Scientology or Christian Science, but clearly I've heard about Scientology, less about Christian. I don't know about Christian Science, honestly. But I heard that there were 3 different breakouts, 3 different new chapters. So I'm taking a guess on the Christian Science one. Studying other religions doesn't imply infidelity to one's faith. So this you can see by illustration, the branching out of your mind. I'm not a religious person. Do you have a devotion to a principle? Is your life guided by that principle? Do you make conscious efforts to behave in a way that is demonstrating that in a fidelity, an affection, an attachment to that principle? Probably so. So you can see the illustration of branching your mind out. That's a branching out of your mind, not an infidelity or unfaithfulness to what you believe. And shame on you if you are an adult and you still don't know that. Shame on you if you are an adult and you still fear the knowledge of other religions. Shame on you. Knowledge leads to understanding, and understanding to tolerance of people with other viewpoints. That's from page 8. You can see I have a couple typos in there. True, people may strongly disagree about their religious beliefs, even if you call science a religion. Strongly disagree. Atheism, by definition, you are faithful to it, is a religion. True, people may strongly disagree about their religious beliefs, but there is no basis for hating a person just because he or she holds a different viewpoint. And that is like 3rd grade. That's like 1st grade. That's like 1st grade stuff. And yet we have people fighting out here all the time throughout history because they hate other people for their beliefs. I stand by this book. I just stand by this, JW, what you are really smart in keeping your literature as part of your institution. Really smart. That literature was, to me, founded on good intentions, on discovery, on exactly what God wants his people to do. How do we know if the religious teaching is valuable and good? They should influence the personality and daily conduct of each believer. And that's from page 12. I don't know why I've got such a difference over there. It looks to me like in type, but maybe not. That is, how do we know if your religious teachings, now again, oh, it's complex out there. No, it's not really that complex. It's not really that complex. Is your religious teaching valuable and good? They should influence the personality and daily conduct of each believer in ways that are valuable and good. Your Milton Friedman precedent is not good or valuable, and any justice ruling on that precedent is not good and therefore not a valuable justice. Not at all. Doesn't belong in that position. Not at all. And we're tired of you've got the credentials because you know somebody who knows somebody, which is what it amounts to in lawyers, in judges, in trials, in entertainment, in business. It's all about who you know. That's not good conduct. That's not extending our beliefs, but you can see the fear in doing that, right? How do we know if the religious teaching is valuable and good? They should influence the personality and daily conduct of each believer in good ways. Do we know that you are making decisions for profit? You have an idol. That idol is not part of any kind of a process that adorns a good and loving God or a good and loving lifestyle. Bam! Done. Done. Anyone who is operating under the premise of I can do it because of the Milton Friedman precedent, done. 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 Because they are not then focused on any constitutional right, and those rights are trying to ensure that the teachings are valuable and good for all people. Now, chapter 2, religion, how did it begin? That's the name of the chapter. So going back and cherry picking from the book, philosophizing about what I cherry pick, and in some small instances showing some disagreement, which again is one of the reasons why we're not reading it. And it's not the title of our world history class. All right? But certainly giving credit where credit is due. There has never existed any people anywhere at any time who were not in some sense religious. And this is from the New Encyclopedia Britannica, and it's from the book on page 19. Now, one of the things that the book doesn't do is give me a great cite. It's one of the things it just doesn't do. But it does a pretty good job about referencing what they're saying. And in fact, I went to AI and I said, I've read this. Can you confirm basically? Yes. In some ways, AI is like very elusive about confirmation or whether it's politically correct or whether or not they actually are an algorithm or a human being or what the fuck is going on with AI. Who even knows, right? What they've created is neurotic AI. Oh, we're reflecting the image of the whatever your stupidity brings you to rationalize. Nobody gives a fucking shit. And that is time for earmuffs. So, because I'm not taking that one back. So, okay. Then looking for a beginning of religion, and this is, and coming full circle, the value in that faulty and knowing there's the faulty premise and how subtle it is to be able to pick up that faulty premise. The faulty premise is You're trying to find God from a scientific perspective, and you can't do it because it was here all along. So stop trying to find a beginning. We already know no beginning, no end. We already know that infinite. We already know that. So stop trying to look for a beginning. Well, you know that. I don't know that. Okay, John Rutledge. The pattern for spiritual begins for the pattern for all right. For the spiritual or spirituality begins with a central figure who is often deified and can have a mystic aura. This is on page 20. Now, here's where you can feel and see the agenda of the book. You begin to feel it. I studied with them for a year at my house. You can feel and see the agenda. And then the agenda goes down a certain path, which is isolation, and that is degradation. Okay, so I don't really like the way that you institute and have then given a genesis to the reputation of people like Scientology, whether or not you are actually connected, but I think that you are. Great intentions to bring science to religion, but then who would break off? Greedy people and atheists, right? In a way. So, but here is the beginning of the agenda. And the agenda is usually aimed at Catholics, almost always aimed at Catholics, I have found from Jehovah's Witness. That's subjective. You could decide to do research on it. I don't know, but a lot of times it is. And that really is because it seems and feels to be more of a pantheistic and polytheistic religion. When you've got the Pope involved in the mix, it becomes polytheistic, for sure. So I can see why Jehovah's Witnesses really are pounding at the same institution that's causing and rationalizing and getting paid for these religious wars, these religious decisions and rulings, these religious, the religious pressure that people feel to act in non-godly, in ungodly ways, right? The pattern for spirituality begins with a central figure who is often deified. So here their aim is right at Mary. Catholicism at Mary. You've given her this mystic aura. The Bible gives her none of that mystic aura, but this can be said about Muhammad, who didn't intentionally get this mystic aura, and Darwin himself, which is, in a way, the word I'm thinking of is antithetical to atheism, because you can't give rise to a mystic aura when you don't believe in this mystic realm. Well, how convenient, since people have written about it since the beginning of time. But okay, you can't see it, we get it. Science, doubting Thomases. But they cannot give rise to this idea of a mystic aura being relevant or true in any sense if you're an atheist and or / scientific atheist, because none of that can be seen, right? None of that can be measured, that mystic aura. And how it gets there. They can measure it theoretically, right? Look at the progression of the mystic aura on Mary. Did Muhammad? So the point right there, though, is intend for a mystic aura is what I'm saying. I don't know. But Darwin didn't. Awfully hard to give rise to a mystic aura, a religion, so to speak, a mystic aura around Darwin when you're a scientist. It just doesn't work for you, does it? Today's religions contain the information needed to understand their beginnings. Buddha was appalled by the suffering and deplorable conditions in society dominated by Hinduism. Muhammad was disturbed by idolatry and immorality in religious practices. Today's religions contain the information needed to understand their beginnings. I know where Catholicism started. Today's religions. I know where Christianity outside of Catholicism started. I know how it started. Catholicism is trying to have their hands in everything, aren't they? Theories. Religion began when people concluded that the body was inhabited by a soul. That's a theory. Anima. A supernatural power animated everything. Religion grew out of the belief in magic. Cannibalism allowed for the rebellious son to gain his father's powers. There's a mystic aura to religion that turns away from the idea that religion is supposed to be valuable, good, and influence the daily conduct of each believer in those ways, right? Now we're talking about something that's a little bit beyond that, in that it is simply a devotion that has a mystic aura. And where's the goodness in that? Where's the value in that? So definitely ways to think about the way that we then regulate or divide whatever our tax dollars among religious institutions have they demonstrated that what they're, and the same goes for the way that we make laws, Milton Friedman law, and the way that we make laws relative to or set precedent, whatever it is, for example, our monuments as well. So now you've created an institution that would be against God, a monotheistic God, that needs to be maintained by tax dollars. You've created an aura around political figures, elevated people like Andrew Jackson, for example, to a mystical power. Okay, so many things to think about and talk about. I for one love this very natural turn into world religions because I do not know what I need to know about them. I hope that this book gives me a really good feel for their belief in the religion being valuable, right? That we find out that these religions are truly valuable. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. Thanks so much for joining me here in the Bookless classroom. As I said, I'm kind of excited about the way we've taken a turn in this Bookless classroom. I hope that you are too. I see a big goose egg out there. I know you're watching. Thanks so much for joining me.